Page 156. Addendum. Spirit. What is to be understood by this? Spirit. What is this now, however, in truth? Spirit is the substance of the Wesenheit of creation, its being, and existence. Spirit is, however, also the substance of creational creation which enlivens each life form. Spirit is, however, also that tiny part piece of creation power which, as a tiny part piece of creation spirit, enlivens the human being, and enables him or her, after all, to be able to lead his or her existence. The consciousness and the spirit. In the human being, there is not only one form of consciousness with regard to his or her perception of space and time and all material and spiritual things. Every consciousness form also stands in connection to the spirit, which forms the decisive value for everything. In all and everything, where a consciousness makes itself felt, there is a spirit present, which steers everything, and which is also perceptible. Thus, every consciousness is therefore also steered through the spirit. Also, the thinking of the human being himself or herself receives the driving power through the spirit. To the human beings of Earth, of the scientific knowledge in particular, it is known that cells of organic matter, observed under the microscope, possess a consciousness. This was ascertained and recognized through research and tests, in the form that organic matter was bombarded with colored light, whereby they were influenced in their motions. This organic matter, cells, as was ascertained, possesses no brain, so therefore possesses no central organ for perception as animals and human beings do. Also known is that in cases where a living and functional brain is present, a form of thinking also takes place which, however, need not always be conscious and objective, as this is the case with the human being. Also, various animal species have at their disposal a conscious and objective thinking, although the fundamental rule for the fauna consists therein that their thinking is less conscious and unobjective. With the human being, however, it is so that in him or her a conscious and an unconscious thinking is in motion, whereby both forms are not only organic, but rather also spiritually directed. With him or her, the human being, it also becomes evident that he or she, as such, is able to think consciously and objectively, but on the other hand, also unconsciously and unobjectively. If, for example, a human being finds himself or herself in a state of deepest loss, or consciousness, or anesthetization, so he or she nevertheless still possess a living and functioning brain. In this state, however, every form of the material of the still functioning consciousness, respectively awake consciousness, is absent to him or her, which represents the outer and transitory consciousness, or alternatively, as it is called, the material consciousness. In the state of the anesthetization, or loss of consciousness, the consciousness is not aware of the material things and the reality of its environment. In this state, the human being, therefore, has then detached himself or herself from the conscious, which is why it is said that he or she is unconscious, therefore without consciousness. Despite this fact, however, a certain consciousness is active within the anesthetized or unconscious body that remains fully operational and therefore fully functioning, namely, the subconsciousness. Despite the disconnection of the outer consciousness, of the material consciousness, the organs of the body do not cease in their functioning, but rather these continue to remain integrated and performing. This further functioning of the subconsciousness is based therein that it stands in constant impulse connection with the spirit, which works as the life motor. Were this not so, no reactions to stimuli would appear, which are applied to an anesthetized or unconscious body. These certain reactions to stimuli also prove that the unconscious actually exists and also still remains fully functional and directs the body, even with the disconnection of the material consciousness or awake consciousness. Should even the brain, as an organ of the material consciousness, be partly removed, destroyed, or harmed, so, nevertheless, the unconscious still continues to work in connection with the spirit, independently of the material consciousness and cerebrum. Thereby, it results that the heart, lungs, and all other organs in the human body remain fully functioning and continue to work, without any cessation of their activity. Under the guidance of the unconscious, each cell continues to work to its full extent through the consciousness prevailing in it in order to preserve the body. Thereby, it becomes very clear that the human forms of consciousness manifest themselves in two different manners. So, therefore, in an outer, the material form, which is transitory and destructible, and secondly, in the unconscious form, which stands in contact and in connection with the spirit, which keeps the human body alive and functioning correctly.